Hey everyone, Nick here from Talking Cardboard, and today I'm with a special guest who's David Thompson. David is a designer for a variety of games, board games, a lot of solitaire war games that I'm a big fan of. And today we'll be talking about a new game that he's worked on called Resist, which will be on GameFound probably around the time this video is published online. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to David to briefly introduce yourself and kind of give us the high-level overview of this game. Here today we'll do a quick playthrough and tutorial of it so you guys can see for yourself how this game works.
First off, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Really appreciate the opportunity to show off the game, give it a little teach and some sample play. I wanted to say, this is a game that I'm co-designing with Trevor Benjamin and Roger Tankersley. It's two guys that I've worked with a lot in the past. Trevor and I have worked together on games like Undaunted and War Chest, and Roger and I have worked together on a game called Sniper Elite. It'll come out soon. So this is a game that's being published by Salt and Pepper, who's historically, they're a Spanish publisher who's historically done a lot of Spanish localizations. But in this case, they came to us and asked us to design a game specifically for them, for both an English and Spanish language audience. So we thought, what better thing to do than to design a game about, something that's an underserved part of Spanish history. So that's this game of Resist. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But one thing I did want to mention, though, Nick, is, in addition to thanks for having me on, it's probably worth mentioning that you were a playtester in this. So we had a massive playtest group really help us hone the game, and so I've flipped open the scenario book here. So in our list of playtesters, we've got you proudly listed. So really appreciate the help that you provided us on the game.
Yeah, no problem, David. It was a pleasure. I should mention I'm an inexperienced playtester, so this was a great opportunity for me to kind of see what that's all about. And this is the first time then I've seen all this artwork during the playtesting that David mentioned I was part of. The cards were essentially black and white. There really wasn't much artwork at all. So this is already, for me, really cool to look at and see what the final artwork kind of turned out to be like. Thanks for that, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we should mention real quick, the artist is not well known in the board game community, not yet anyway, but he's legitimately a world famous comic book artist. So his name is Albert Montes. He's been a nominee, runner-up. I'm not exactly sure the specifics for the Eisner Award, which is the comic industry's top award for some of the stuff he's done. My personal favorite work of his was the graphic novel adaptation of Slaughterhouse-Five, which, if you know anything about literature, that's pretty amazing. So it was an awesome delight to get to work with him, and I'll be a moment of vulnerability here. I'll reveal to anybody who's watching, to the audience, that there was a lot of pressure when we knew that he was going to be the artist to try to come up with a game that was the gameplay was good enough to meet the amazing art.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, I was gonna say already I'm really pleased with this aesthetic from, again, going back to the playtesting, where the art could have gone in any direction from what I had seen. So yeah, this kind of comic book style art, which you said is based on the artist for this game, really looks great. So cool. Yeah. And maybe you're going to do this anyway, but I was going to say, when it comes to war games, World War II war games, I would say I'm a fan of that genre. And I think, like myself, most people are familiar with, of course, the European theater and Pacific theater, and the U.S. and D-Day and the German front, Russia and Germany, and UK and fighting Germany, and Japanese U.S. warfare in the Pacific. But I'm sure a lot of people forget that it was called a world war for a reason. There was obviously a lot of conflict ongoing in Spain. So if you're able, for myself, probably at the very least, and probably some other viewers out there, if you're able to kind of give a high level overview of the conflict in Spain during the war, and then what the background of this game specifically is, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, I mentioned that Salt and Pepper, the publisher, came to us and they basically said, "Hey, we want you to." They're like I said, they do a lot of localizations, but also the lead there is a fan of historical war games, and so he had played some of my stuff, and he came to us and basically said, "Hey, we want you to design a game for us," and that's it. It was the sort of we could do whatever we wanted with that, and that's the first thing I thought was, well, he's a fan of historical war games, so let's go back, make it something historically relevant. And of course, I wanted to set it in Spain as a paying homage to the publisher. And so I thought about a couple of topics. One was La Nueve, which was a small Spanish unit that was embedded in the French who helped liberate Paris. And so they have an interesting story. But instead, I settled on the Spanish Maquis. Now, if you know anything about history, the word Maquis probably brings two things to mind, right? So many people know of the Maquis as the French Maquis, right? So when you typically talk about World War II, you talk about French resistance. Or maybe you know about the Maquis from Star Trek, right? Because it's, if you're a Star Trek nerd, they use that term there for the resistance in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But what's very very little known is the Spanish Maquis, right? So where they originated from was they were really born from the Spanish Civil War. So, 1936 to 39 and the lead up to World War II, Spain had the Civil War. In many ways, it was a predecessor to World War II. The forces of Franco, who was a dictator, were successful, and it pushed out the Republicans who, many of them fled the country and many of them went to France, and they took up arms with the, as part of the Allies. Now, Spain was technically neutral during World War II. They did a lot of things, sort of covertly on both sides, but really the group that we're talking about in this game is the Spanish Maquis. And so they came out of these Republicans that fled the country. They joined with the French resistance. They helped the Allies during the war. And really part of what they were hoping was, after the war was over, that the Allies would help them liberate Spain from Franco. That did not happen. But after the war, what they did was they continued their fight. They went back to Spain, and that's what this game is about. This game is not set during the Spanish Civil War. It's not set during World War II. It's set immediately in the aftermath of World War II, where you are leading a cell of Spanish Maquis. You're going back to Spain, and you're trying to liberate Spain from Franco's forces.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for that background, David. Well, yeah, let's actually talk a little bit now about the game itself. How would you kind of describe the mechanics of this game at a high level? I see, I know it's a card game, but, how would you kind of describe it in your words?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, we should say it's a purely solitaire game, right? So, 100% solitaire. It says on the game 30 minutes. It probably will take you 30 minutes like the first time you play it, but this game plays super quick, right? So especially if you lose early, because it's pretty hard. So, solitaire game plays in about 20 to 30 minutes. It is, as you said, it's a card game. Now, some people are immediately going to think of it in terms of like deck building, but it's certainly not that, right? We want to be very honest about people. It's very much more deck management / really deck destruction, right? And what I mean by that is at the beginning of the game, you're going to start with 12 Maquis, your cell of Maquis that you're leading. And over the course of the game, what's happening is you're going on missions with these Maquis, and you're going to be using them, and we'll get into this as we do the full teach, but there's the one core tension about the game is whether you want to keep them hidden, meaning they are acting covertly against Franco's forces, and if you keep them hidden, they stay in your deck, or if you want to reveal them, and it's literally revealing them to the forces of Franco because they do some sort of extraordinary thing. But what that means is they're out of your deck from then on. And so the entire overarching tension of this game is you're trying to complete as many missions as possible. And to do that, you're going to have to manage when is the best time to reveal your Maquis. But what that means is, for the most part, you're never going to be stronger in this game than you are at the very beginning of the game. And you're going to be managing this. How do you keep your Maquis intact to try to accomplish as many missions as possible? And then I would say that another element it's not as obvious as in a sort of Yahtzee style or King of Tokyo style push your luck game, but there's a lot of undertones of push your luck in every part of this game, right? Because can I go on another mission? Will the Maquis be able to last. And so you'll see that over and over again because there's so many different ways to lose. Can you accomplish another mission? Can you keep your Maquis together? And so it's this game of a lot of tense decisions about when the right time, because there's just no really right or wrong. It's what's the best time in the situation you're in to make choices about revealing your Maquis, and how willing are you to continue to push your luck in your effort to accomplish these missions against Franco's forces.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I struggled with during the play testing, was knowing when, like you were describing, to show your resistance forces, because like you were saying, you get much better abilities when you do that, but obviously the cost is now they are essentially more or less removed from play for the future rounds. So that's definitely an interesting choices to be made with how you manage your cards. So yeah. And seems very thematic too. That was my I would say kind of challenge with the game is not necessarily being super well versed on the background of this theme, which is also what I appreciate about a game like this, or war game like this, is that it's a historical conflict I didn't have much background of personally. So by playing the game, I kind of understood that this is simulating more or less what it was actually like in Spain during this time period of having these resistance forces trying to be subvertedly, is that a word? Subvert? Yeah. So trying to be hidden, doing, accomplishing goals while staying hidden and unknown. But then at the same time, at some point, you can only do so much, by trying to be clandestine, and eventually having to come out and make, do something a little more impactful, but at the same time, putting your life more on the line. And I think this game does a good job of, teaching someone like me what that was like, having not a lot of background on this time period. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So
okay, well, should I kind of go into a quick teach of it and then maybe play a couple of rounds?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So as we said, it's a card game. What we've got here is I've got the background of the table laid out. Now this is, I don't know exactly if this is going to be the case, but what I think is going to happen is during the GameFound, whatever you call it, campaign, there will be a possible add-on for a playmat that would serve like this to provide structure to it. But otherwise, the game just, when you lay the game out, when you set it up, it tells you structure the layout of the cards similar to what we've got here on the table. So this is just kind of providing us a guide for that.
Yep.
But okay. The setup's very simple. We have a deck of Maquis cards. So this is really what the entire game revolves around, is managing our Maquis. In the very first time you play it, there's 24 Maquis available to you. The first time you play it, we say, just shuffle the deck and take 12 of those, right? Now, after that, after you become familiar with the game, what we really suggest you do is do this, essentially a draft, right? You flip over 2 of them, pick one, flip over 2 more, pick one, etc. The 12 you pick would be the Maquis that you start with in your hidden deck, meaning these are hidden from Franco's forces. The 12 you don't pick are in the recruit deck, right? So again, like I said, it's not a deck builder. You're not going to be doing a ton of recruiting, but there are a few ways in the game that are pretty hard to get a few of these recruit Maquis to join your forces. So,
which is always great. It's a great feeling to get more cards, because you run out of cards fast. So I love the cards that allowed you to recruit. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And so really, these 12 cards are the key to the game, right? Our hidden Maquis that we start with. Now, in addition to the 12 Maquis, we also have 3 spies. One of the loss conditions in the game is if we ever draw an entire hand of spies, we instantly lose. And these spies, of course, represent Franco's forces who are infiltrating our cell of Maquis and trying to thwart our plans. And so of our now deck of 15 cards, 3 of those start as spies. There's also 3 more spies over the course of the game that could potentially be added to the deck. Okay, so we've got our Maquis deck. We've got it infiltrated with a few spies. Now we have 3 decks of missions. Now, these missions obviously represent the things that we're trying to accomplish over the course of the game. There are 3 eras, and these are based historically on what was going on at the time, right? So era 1 is the reinvasion of Spain. This is when the Maquis, when World War II is ending, they come back to Spain and they're trying to start the liberation. Then there is the era 2, which is the splintering of the Maquis. This is when things start to kind of fall apart for the Maquis. Franco's forces are fighting back pretty consistently. And then era 3, the hunting of the Maquis. And this is when Franco's really trying to squash the Maquis. Now, one thing I should say is, there are ways we can talk about how you win, quote unquote, win in the game. But there was no real ever chance that the Maquis were going to be successful against Franco, right? So you're trying to do as well as you can, but this idea that you're going to be successful and truly liberate Spain from Franco was never really in the cards, so to speak. So, okay, so what we do to set this up is we take 4 cards from Era 1, 3 from Era 2, and 3 from Era 3. And that's going to set our deck of missions. And we're going to set Era 3 on the bottom, and then Era 2 on top of that. And the 4 Era 1 cards are our starting missions.
Okay.
This is a good time to say that what I'm going through here is the sort of standard game, right? So the standard game, we're going on missions. We're trying to get as many victory points as possible. The game also comes with a book of scenarios. There are 8 standalone scenarios, and then 3 scenarios that are like historically linked scenarios. So whereas the base game, you're trying to score as many victory points as possible to win, those scenarios are very specific objectives you're trying to overcome, and they're all different. And so they just provide a much different way to play the game. Some people prefer score as many points as you can, which is the base game. Some people prefer a very specific objective. So
yeah,
you'll have both in the game.
And I'll add too, David mentioned at the beginning that eventually once you play this game a few times, you'll start wanting to just draft your own Maquis, and which definitely the first time playing, you're not going to know what the value of each of the Maquis cards is. So drafting from the start would be a challenge, but definitely once you start playing those scenarios, that's where then the drafting becomes more interesting, because now you understand there's a unique objective given whatever scenario you're playing. And so some Maquis cards are definitely going to be better suited than others for those scenario objectives. So I appreciated that kind of aspect of this game once you introduced scenarios. But as you said too, if you just want to play a quick game with point based is the points a point based game, you can do that too and have fun that way. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so then we have our enemy deck, right? So we have 32 enemies, and if we look at the mission cards, you're going to see a few things on them. In the far left hand side, it looks like a little card symbol with a number in it. That's called the garrison value, and what that tells us is how many enemies are going to be at the mission. And so, for example, this one has 3, so we put 3 enemies there. And we just have to set this up. Now, this is a little bit of setup at the very beginning of the game, but from here on, when we introduce a new mission, we'll only be introducing 1 mission at a time. So this you can resolve pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And then I guess let's stop to talk just a moment about, we've teased this sort of base game, but let's talk about, how you win, how you lose in the core game, right? So we've talked about we're going on missions, and if you look at the mission cards in the lower right, you can see a victory point marker. So this one's worth 1, 1, 2, 1. We're trying to score as many victory points as we can, and we do that by accomplishing these missions. So we go on a mission, we accomplish it, we score those victory points. The game is a little unusual in that if we go on a mission and we accomplish it, we're going to have an opportunity to stop the game at that point, right? After the mission's over, do we want to continue? We get to choose, and goes back to what I said about push your luck. We get to choose, do we want to stop our resistance at that point? If we stop our resistance with a positive point total, period, we go on a mission, we accomplish it, and we stop, we're going to get a draw, meaning we don't lose, we don't win, we draw the game, no matter what. And so the only way to actually, quote unquote, lose the game is to do it in one of 3 different ways. Either we attempt and fail 2 missions. So if we go on a mission and we fail it, we're going to flip it over. We won't be able to go on that mission again. We'll just have the rest of them available to us. If that happens twice, if we fail 2 missions, we lose the game. If at any time, I mentioned this before, we draw an entire hand of spies, then we fail the game. Now, we're going to be drawing 5 cards in a hand, up to 5 cards in a hand. So what that means is either we'll have to get 2 spies in our deck, 2 more spies, so we can draw 5 spies, or our deck gets so small that it's possible to draw just spies. And then the other way is there's a deck of 8 civilian cards. So these civilians represent the people who can potentially get caught up in the crossfire between the Maquis and Franco's forces. And you can see the civilians have a different number of, they haven't been shuffled. So we've got 2, 3, 1, and 0. So it can range anywhere from 0 to 3, number of civilians that get killed when we draw a card. If we ever get to 5 civilians killed, then we lose the game. So what you could see, it's possible to actually just draw the 3 and a 2 card and lose right there. So those are the 3 ways to lose. We fail 2 missions, 5 civilians die, or we draw all spies. As I said, if we go on a mission, we accomplish it, and we choose to quit, and we haven't lost, then we'll draw, unless we get up to 15 victory points. 15 is the threshold for a minor victory, and then it scales. If you get 19, you get a standard victory, etc. So that's the way the game works. So we've got our Maquis, we've set up the missions, we've got extra spies here available to us, more missions we go on, our recruit deck of Maquis, and our civilians. So that's how we set it up. And now let's start what a sample turn would look like. So as I said, we draw 5 Maquis cards. We'd be drawing these into our hand and looking at how we want to proceed from here. So we've got 5. One of them is a spy, which is totally useless to us. With the exception of doing some things to get him out of our deck, is basically irrelevant during this phase of the game. The first thing we want to do is, you can imagine that we've come together, the Maquis cells come together, and we're planning what mission we're going to go on. So we have not chosen which of these missions yet. We want to look at our Maquis, do some planning, figure out which one we're going to go on, and we'll go on that mission. And so from that perspective, if you look at these Maquis, you'll notice a couple of things. First, there's the hidden side of every Maquis and the revealed side. We've talked about this a little bit. If we play a Maquis on their hidden side, they're going to stay in our hidden deck, and we'll continue to be able to use them throughout the game. If we play them on the revealed side, they're going to be put in the revealed deck, which means Franco's forces know about them. They're off hiding in the mountains. They can no longer help us unless some extraordinary thing happens. There's 1 or 2 times in the game you could potentially get a Maquis back from the revealed deck, but pretty much you can count on them being gone for the rest of the game. So we've got to make decisions about whether they stay hidden or revealed. The other thing is, if you look at them, they've got actions that are plan actions and actions that are attack actions. So right now we're in the planning phase. We're thinking about what mission we want to go on, and we decide, do we want to use them for planning or attacking? And so let's just look at a couple of these cards. So we'll start with Antonio here. So if we look at him, we say, Antonio can discard a spy from your hand to the hidden discard pile and then draw a card from the hidden deck. So during the plan phase, before we've gone on a mission, we could take Antonio. If we put him on the left side here, that means we're activating him for their hidden side, right? Because the hidden side's over here by the hidden deck. We'll just go through this process. We're going to play him for a plan action, but this could be done plan or attack. But in this case, we're doing it for plan. He's staying hidden. He gets to discard this spy, and we get to draw a card immediately. So that's what we've decided to do with Antonio. We do it during the plan phase, and that's what happens. So now we've drawn Manuel. Now we look at Manuel and we say, oh, Manuel actually has a really good action here for planning. He can flip all the enemies at a mission face up. Okay, so what that means is, right now, if we choose to go on one of these missions, we have no idea what the enemies behind the mission are. We have no idea how they can affect us. But Manuel would allow us to look at that and see, what's going to happen. So now let's take a look at some of the missions to see what our options are. And we'll talk about the different elements of the mission. So we've already talked about the garrison value. That's the number of enemies there. We've already set that up. Next to it is the defense value. This is the number of damage it's going to take to overcome that. And each Maquis has an attack value when they're hidden and an attack value when they're revealed. So Antonio is already contributing 1 point of attack value because he's hidden. So for crossing the border, it would take us 3 points to defeat it. every mission has an effect. They can fall into one of three categories. They can be defeated effects, which means when we defeat it, that thing happens. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. You can see for this mission, it has a defend effect. That means when we choose to go on that mission after the plan phase, this effect begins, right? So, for example, this one says, when the mission is chosen, immediately choose a marquee card, not a spy from your hand, and discard it, right? So we would choose to go on this mission and immediately have to do that. And then the last effect that we don't have here is survive, and we won't talk about that now because we can talk about that if we get it. So we at this point, before we use Manuel, let's say we wanted to use him to flip over all the enemies at a mission, we would probably want to decide, well, what mission do we think we might want to go on? We're not declaring that we're going on it, but we were kind of doing reconnaissance for it. And so both of these missions, they look kind of easy, right? The defense is pretty low. They don't have that many enemies, so it's kind of enticing to think about going on them. But they both have defeat effects that actually hurt us. This one says, if we defeat this, we're going to add an extra enemy face down to every other mission. And this one says, if we defeat it, we're going to draw one fewer Maquis. So there's a lot of trade-offs in this game, right? Do we go on these easy missions that on the face of them look easy, but there's a penalty to be paid for it. And whereas if you look at this one,
I was just going to say, definitely the order of how you defeat the missions then becomes important, because this one that adds enemies to all missions, if you want to hold that one off to later, because then you're not hurting yourself as bad as if you did that one first. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's really, I mean, you can see there's no output randomness. There's no like dice rolling or anything like that in the game. All of it is about like trade-offs about, if I do this now, what's the impact of this later, etc. Right?
And you know exactly what cards you have in your hand, more or less. So it's not like there's any surprises. Obviously, you shuffle them, but yeah, I agree. There's a lot. It is a lot of. There's not a lot of complete randomness in this game.
Yep. Now, okay, so I think, I'll ask you, Nick, you look at these and what mission do you think you might want to go on out of the choices available to us?
Well, I always like the 2-card ones, because it's just 2 cards and then you get one out of the way. So, but the thing is too, what I've learned is when you start a game, you have your full cards at your disposal. So as you start weeding through your deck, you're losing some good cards, and then you almost want to start with a tougher mission at first, because that you'll have all your cards at the start. So then I'm like, well, maybe we just go with this four enemy card, but remove one spy in your hand from the game, and then that's a great defeat condition, is you get to take out a spy.
It is. Now, what we've done, unfortunately, is we've already removed the spy from our hand, right? So he's already been discarded. So this one we want to save until we have another.
Oh yeah, I forget. You only get one hand. Yeah, I forgot that you don't get to draw again once you pick a mission. So
right,
you're right. So that one would almost be a waste for.
Yep. So one thing we could do, this one only has 2 enemies, right? When the mission is chosen, we immediately choose a Maquis card, not a spy from our hand, and discard it. So this one would make the mission more difficult for us. But we might be able to defeat it, right? Regardless of what we do, we're going to be able to use Manuel to see what enemies are there and plan for it, right? Because we don't have to go on the mission that we flip over.
Yeah, and I forgot to take into account the fact of what you already drew, because obviously if you didn't have a very strong hand of cards, you're not going to want to go for something that looks like it could be challenging. But as of right now, since we basically have 5 full cards with values on them, then that we're in a good spot, which isn't surprising since this is the first draw of the game. But yeah, so sorry, were you saying you're going to suggest maybe we go for destroy the barracks after all, or
I think I would say just pick one. Let's pick one and go through the motions.
Yeah, let's just go for destroy the barracks. Yeah,
destroy the barracks. Okay, so let's play Manuel for his plan action because we're still in the plan phase.
Yep.
And he gets to flip over the enemies at a mission.
Yep.
Right? So let's flip all these over, and now that gives us a chance to talk about enemies. So one thing that's important to note, the missions have a defense value of, in this case, of 4, right, for us to defeat it. All the enemies also have defense values, right? It's important. We don't have to defeat the enemies in order to defeat the mission, except for the guard. That's his special ability. We have to defeat him before the mission. So if we want to go on this mission right now, we have to defeat the guard first. Then we can attack the mission. So we would need 5 points of attack power to defeat the two things. The difference is all the other sort of stuff that happens if we don't defeat the enemies, right? So, for example, the Spy Master. If we go on this mission and the Spy Master lives through it, they're going to add another spy to our discard pile, which is horrible.
I hate that. Yeah.
Pile. That's horrible.
Yeah, I agree.
But then we have the radio operator. If she lives, they're going to place an extra enemy face down on all the other missions. So all of these, I mean, the whole entire, once again, the entire game is a trade-off, right? So if we go on this mission, what we want to make sure we do, if at all possible, is come up with a total of 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 attack power, right? So we can wipe out everything. So now it becomes an issue of, we know we have 2 points of attack for Manuel and Antonio. Can we generate 7 more points of attack or do things to get this down to a point where we can defeat it? So let's look through our rest of our cards now and see what else we can do, right? Jacinto can allow us to, if he's hidden, we can look through our hidden deck and we can sequence it. We can add cards. We can discard any cards and we can put the rest back. Now, the good thing about that is, there's 9 cards here. We could draw up and we could draw some more spies and we could discard them immediately. So we basically avoid those spies. So that's one great thing about him. For his revealed power, he can discard a Maquis from hand and draw 2 cards from the hidden. So this is a great way to get a lot more attack power. But of course, it's a trade-off. We might draw a spy or whatever, and he has to be revealed to do.
Yeah.
Marcelo can we can use him to plan, and we can draw a card from the hidden deck, which is great. You can start to see where combinations happen, right? Like theoretically, we could use Jacinto for his plan action, stack this deck with cards, and then use Marcelino to draw the one we set on the top, right? And then Consuela has no attribute, right, for hidden, but she can just do 2 damage for when she's hidden, which is great. And then this is one of my favorite abilities. She has 0 for her revealed attack power, but if we were to reveal her, we can take an enemy from the mission and we gain its attack value, right? So it does 2 things. First of all, it takes away the impact of having the enemy altogether, and then it adds to it. So there's tons of ways to approach this. There's no right or wrong.
And I will say for that Consuelo card, the one thing that at the back of my memory, I want to say some of these enemies can get up to 5 or even higher.
Yeah, 4. 4 is the highest.
4, yeah. So obviously, if you hadn't played at all before, you wouldn't necessarily know that. But I would say that card would be good then for at least 3, if not 4 level enemy for sure.
Yep. So you're thinking, let's save this one, right?
Exactly, because that 2 hidden value is not so
good.
bad. Yeah.
Yep, it's good. So now we're up to 4 points of attack, right? We need to try to get up to 5. We need to try to get 5 more if we want to wipe out everything. So we got a few different paths we can get there. We could reveal both of these guys and know that we're going to get there. Actually, even Marcelino, he's 2, and when he's revealed, we get to add a +1 attack for every other Maquis in play. Right, so he by himself we could just reveal him and wipe them all out.
Yeah, if you can get by, for sure. I mean, that I have to say that sounds like a good idea, because in my mind, if you can get by a mission with only revealing 1 card, ideally you don't reveal any cards, but that's really difficult to do. So 1 reveal to complete a mission is definitely what I would say we
Yep.
should do.
Okay. And so this is what I would propose then. So we're still in the plan phase. So let's use Jacinto for his plan action, right? Which is we reveal the top 3 cards and we
Yeah.
can discard any others. So let's look at these 3. This is perfect. So we're going to discard the spy.
Yep.
We'll put these 2 back on top.
Yep.
Now we're going to reveal Marcelino. So we've got. Oh, sorry. That's during the attack. That's an attack power, not a plan action. So now we've done all of our planning. Now we choose our mission. So we're going to choose this one. All defend abilities immediately take effect. So we see that the guard has a defend ability. You have to defeat the guard before we can attack the mission. That's fine. Now it's the attack phase, and we can do our attack actions. So now we want to use Marcelino for his attack, which is he now generates 2. So we are at a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus 1 for every other Maquis in play, right? So we've got tons of attack value. We can take out everything. We total it all up and we divide it however we want in whatever order we want, as long as we, follow the rules, right? So we're going to defeat the guard first.
Yep.
That allows us to destroy the barracks. We are going to go ahead and defeat the barracks. But as soon as we do that, its defeat effect takes place. So now we're going to add an enemy to every other mission. Then we'll defeat the spy master, and that prevents us from taking a spy. And we defeat the radio operator, and that prevents us from adding another enemy to every mission.
Yep.
So we are done. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. So I'll go through the round summary completely, right? There's some things that we have to check for. It's irrelevant, but we would defeat the targets. Now we do the aftermath phase. We would check for civilian loss. We would check to see if we've lost 5 civilians. We have not. We do the mission outcome, so we replace the mission. Now this is the first Era 2 mission that we would encounter. It's got 3 enemies, so we'll put them out. And now is the time in the game where we get to choose, do we want to end the resistance? I'm going to put these like this. And this is what we talked about earlier on, right? Now we have 2 victory points. We could choose to end the resistance. Obviously, we're not going to. That's ridiculous. But we could choose to if we wanted to. If we thought we couldn't win, if we thought we were going to lose within the next round, we would want to end the resistance now. But we feel pretty strongly about our position. So we're going to put all of our Maquis that were hidden back in our hidden discard pile. We'll put him in our revealed discard pile. And we're ready to start another round. Yep. Okay, so we clean up them. We draw a new hand, right? So we draw 5 cards, and we would check to see, did we lose because of spies? And obviously we know we won't, because we know where the spies are. And so we're now ready to start a new round. And that's it. We just repeat this, right? Look at the missions, decide what missions we want to go on. Do as well as we can, try to avoid those 3 loss conditions, score as many victory points as possible.
Yep. Yeah, that was a pretty good start, I feel, for that first round. And then, the thing that definitely helps with any of these missions is that perfect information of knowing all the enemy cards, which we were able to take advantage of because of the ability of... I'm forgetting the name of which guy gave us the ability to reveal all the cards. But normally, you may not necessarily have that information going into a mission. So that when you flip some of those enemies over, especially once you flip a 4 over or something, like a 4 valued enemy over, that can be fun. But
there's a lot of what I would call like emergent sort of gameplay and comboing in the game, right? So you can play, and this is really, when you start drafting especially, you can try to draft Maquis that are really just good at attacking, right? Or you can try to draft Maquis that are good at recruiting more Maquis. Or you can try to draft Maquis that are good at revealing information like that. Again, there's no right or wrong. You could try to do some of each of those things, right? But even in the last example of the game, the hand we just played, you saw some comboing that we could have done, but a lot of times it's like, well, if I do this super great combo, I'm going to lose at least one of these people. And am I ready to, just like you said, it's super, we could have easily used whoever, Consuela, right, to overcome that. But we would have lost her. And, we, as you said, we probably want to keep her for later when things get really, really gnarly.
Yeah, you really get a sense of how tight, it's human resources essentially are in the game, which I assume is, like I was saying earlier, very reminiscent of what it was like in reality, where it's not like you had thousands of these Maquis at your disposal to try to, overwhelm the fascist regime in Spain, right?
Basically. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like you didn't have, it's no different than Star Wars, right? Like you only had so many rebels.
That's right.
So you feel that sense of like, okay, you have to be careful with the humans you have. So I feel like that theme really comes through in the game of how you try to maximize the impact every single person has, and knowing when to use a big combo and when to save it for a different mission. There's a lot of choices like that in this game, which make it very interesting.
And I think that, like you're saying, this is a game, you're starting out with literally 12 Maquis, right? You maybe you'll get a couple more over the course of the game. This is really a game about them, about those people, right? And so the coolest thing about it is everything feels very small scale and personal because it is. Mm-hmm. And it ties back what we talked about at the beginning with the art, right? When you look at the art for these people, when you saw the prototype, it might have said like Emilio is a banker and a whatever, right? Like he's is paying somebody off or something. It was like a 1 or 2 word narrative description. And there was a period during the development process where we actually talked about, do we keep that sort of like 1 word of what they are on the card? And I think it's a really important decision that we made not to do that, because if you look at these cards and you look at the art, like every character has a story, right? And they have 2 parts to their story. They have their hidden part and their reveal part. And like, maybe it's a little bit hyperbolic, but you start to kind of like care for these characters, like, oh man, and you start to remember who does what, and it, like they take on a little bit of a personality, and it just helps. There's so sort of so few of them, and they're so precious to you, right? That you genuinely don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
definitely
I really enjoy that.
The illustrations definitely help these cards come to life. No pun intended. So, no, that's cool. So I think that first round kind of covered all the major aspects of
I don't know. I think we talked about pretty much everything, because I mentioned that there were 3 different effects that missions and enemies can have, and we saw those kind of play out, right? Like, because there's survive, defend, and defeat, and so just as a kind of sort of reminder to people, and they could appear on both enemies and missions. So, we had a defeat effect on the mission. The defeat effect was add an extra enemy to every mission, right? So when we defeated it, that thing took place. The guard had a defend effect, which was as soon as we chose the mission to go on, he does a thing, right, that we have to overcome. And then both the spy master and the radio operator had these survive effects. And that just means if you don't kill them, they're going to go away, right? There's no such thing as like leaving an enemy behind at a mission. They will all get discarded no matter what you do. So even if we didn't kill them, they're going to go away. But if they go away and we did not defeat them, then their survive effect takes place. So those are the 3 different sort of effects that can happen. And one thing I should mention too is, and this is super important to people if they start digging into the game and are interested in buying it, playing it, whatever, is the game has a very important distinction between what it means to discard something and what it means to defeat it, right? The thing we did, we went in and we were able to defeat everything because we had the attack power to do it. There's a lot of abilities in the game that allow you to discard enemies. And if you discard an enemy, its effect doesn't take place, right? So if it's a defeat effect, it's not defeated, it doesn't do a thing. So it allows you the opportunity to try to avoid effects in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Because I was going to say, I definitely remember enjoying the cards that allow you just to discard an enemy, because then, if the attack value of the card was only like a 1, you can discard an enemy of up to 4. But
Mm-hmm.
but then, like you just said, it also then can negate an ability of some of the cards with those
Yeah.
defeat
Yeah.
abilities, which can be really annoying to deal with at times. And try, I can't.
Let's take a look at Soledad, right? So her revealed ability is it. This is an interesting thing about this game. Um, her defeat ability, her revealed ability, can be very powerful, right? So discard all counter
Yeah,
gorillas from this mission. Now we haven't seen counter gorillas, but let's just flip over these enemies and see if there's one here. Um, Lucky. So there's not one. There's a lot of counter gorillas. If I wanted to look at them. Okay, so here's one. So counter gorillas, they can range in strength from 1 to 4. So they're one of the types of enemies that can have a 4 attack
yeah,
power. And if they survive, they're going to kill a civilian. Okay? So now it's possible, either through your actions or through the sort of the randomness of how the enemies come out, you could have 4 counter gorillas, ranged 1 to 4 strength at a mission, and her revealed power is to discard all of them. Right?
yeah.
So you can imagine that you can start setting up things like that where she's super strong.
Yep.
Right? But yeah, counter guerrillas is another survive effect, and this is the most common way for you to lose civilians is through counter guerrillas. If you allow them to live, if you notice, they don't have a defend effect, so you don't have to kill them, right? You don't have to defeat them before you take on the mission. You can just let them live. But if you let them live, you run the risk of your civilians dying. And here's another guy that we can talk about for a second, the grunt, right? So the guard's effect was you cannot attack the mission without first attacking the guard. Well, the grunt's effect is you can not attack any other enemy without attacking the grunt, right? So if you wanted to go on this mission, you could just ignore all the enemies there, let them do all their things, and just destroy the mission. You just have to be willing to accept that all of these people are going to do all that stuff, that stuff to you.
Yeah.
The military kills Maquis, which is absolutely brutal.
The other thing that I was going to add to the discard and defeat discussion was I feel some of the scenario objectives were to specifically defeat a certain number of counter guerrillas. So that would be a case where, we were just saying how powerful Soledad could be if you're just playing like a regular game or a game where you don't care about defeating counter guerrillas. But in that case, you might not even want this card in your deck because her reveal ability isn't even going to be of use, because if you discard, the counter guerrilla, it doesn't count as defeat, and then you almost are hurting yourself because when they're discarded, now you can't defeat it, and you can't. So
no, you're exactly right, because there actually are scenarios which objective is defeat counter guerrillas. So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
In that case, you specifically don't want her.
Yeah.
However, if you're playing a scenario that is defeat, grunts and guards or whatever it is, then she would be great, right? Because she could help you get rid of the counter guerrillas and focus on those guys. So yeah, I mean, it really is. My recommendation to people would be take out of the box, do a random deal of the base game, get a feel for it, maybe do a little bit of drafting against the base game, and then go into the scenarios with the draft, right? And really optimize your approach to it.
Yeah, I feel like this game rewards you for continuing to play it as to help you understand the cards, and then which cards make more sense for certain depending on what objective you're trying to complete for the first given mission or given round of the game. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said, it plays so quick that it does 15, 20 minutes. So you can repeated plays, right?
Yeah, I will say it was. I guess I'll ask you when I was doing the playtesting, originally at least, it was definitely a challenging game, and I felt it was difficult to win. I guess do you think it has been modified over the last few months to make it? I guess I don't want to say easier because that's not a great word, but or less challenging maybe, or maybe that was just me. I'm curious if that was a common playtest feedback.
So there's a lot of ways to unpack that, right? So one thing that we intentionally did is that it's extremely easy to draw at the game, right? Like it's kind of up to you if you're going to lose, quote unquote. And so this is down to player psychology. What does a draw mean to you, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to say, well, a draw, I didn't win, so it's a loss, right?
Yeah.
So it's really up to you whether you lose or draw, because of how much you're willing to push your luck, right? Now, beyond that, winning is not easy. Even the lowest level, a minor victory, is not easy. It's 15 points.
Yeah.
You're not gonna stumble into a victory. And I'll tell you, it's a really interesting thing, trying to figure out where the right place is when it comes to solitaire games. Because for some people, once they've quote unquote won a solitaire game once, they're kind of done with it, right?
Yeah.
The good news about this is there's so many different ways to play it, right? You've got the base game and all the different scenarios and stuff that, hopefully that wouldn't be the case, right? It's not a quote-unquote puzzle to solve. There's enough depth to
exactly,
it.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think, to answer your actual question, I think we slightly lowered the threshold just a little bit, right? And it was all based on, like I said, I think we had like 70 playtesters. Really, I mean, some people were playing just insane numbers of games. So from a data analysis perspective, we had a really rich data set to draw from. And so I can't remember the exact sort of win percentage we set it at, but achieving a minor victory should be possible after you've learned the game. Meaning, if you play, 4 or 5 times, you've started to get the hang of it, you're building your strategies, you should be able to achieve a minor victory. It will never be easy to get, a victory or a major victory.
Yeah, and I think that kind of ties in with the whole theme of the conflict itself, is that like you said at the beginning, it was never really feasible for them to necessarily have a victory, a traditional victory is what most people consider a victory. And so a draw really was maybe what in a sense is a victory, depending on how you want to look at it. So that I think definitely shows in this game, and that typically you think a victory is you defeat all the bad guys, but you're not going to be able to you don't defeat all the bad guys. Like, there's no way you're going to clear the whole board of all the enemy cards. Like, you're just trying to win missions here and there. You're purposely going to avoid bad guys. Like, in a lot of games, that's obviously completely different. Like, you want to destroy everything that's bad, but you're not going to be able to do that in this game. And that's more or less realistic. Like, it's not like that they were going to be able to destroy all the bad guys. You should definitely feel that the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against you, right? And you're just trying to scratch out every little victory. I mean, we played the first mission, era 1 cards, and none of those were going to be a gimme, right? We were able to, and this is really how it feels throughout the course of the game. We were able to kind of like combo a couple of things and put ourselves in a good position to come out victorious. But even then, we had to reveal a marquee, right? So there's no such thing as easy missions. Yep.
Right. It's always
exactly Even with like the 2-card mission, you reveal those 2 enemy cards, and before, who knows, you get 2 4 point baddies, and then it's like bad guys, and then it's like, well, that escalated quickly, and now so no, well, really cool. Definitely a really cool game. Definitely unique. I can't think of a game that exists like this in the market. So whether historical based or non-historical based, this is the mechanics of this game I feel are very unique, and also a great theme. Like I was saying, I always appreciate a historical theme that I really don't have much background of, because it encourages me to be cognizant of the fact that this history is obviously really important to the publishing company that's putting this game out. As you said, you wanted to kind of pay homage to that, and I think that's really cool, and I'm sure that they're really excited about this, and it's fantastic. I mean, I had no background of that artist either until you mentioned them today, so that's really cool that this game is using art from such a important artist too, and I love that. I love the aesthetic. Looks really great. in TTS. I'm sure it'll look even better in person on actual components and everything. So yeah, I guess unless there's anything else you want to share about the game in Tabletop Simulator, David, I'll let you kind of plug in this game and kind of the future of the timelines of everything, and if there's any other personal things you want to throw out there, feel free to do so.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just a reminder to everybody. So this was, I want to make sure give credit where it's due, right? So this is a co-design with like I said, Trevor Benjamin, Roger Tankersley, being published by Salt and Pepper. The artist is Albert Montes, and the graphic design was done by Meeple Foundry. So super excited about this. It's coming to GameFound May 12th. Hopefully it's received well. Let's. I think, as you said, like it's. Even though we tried to do our best to come up with a gameplay that mirrored sort of the historical situation, right? And you should be able to feel that, and hopefully the art and it all sort of ties together. I do think that, like, ultimately at the end of the day, it's just going to be a really challenging solo game experience, and so I think it might appeal to people who might not even be interested in that.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Right?
Yeah, this is definitely a very accessible game.
Right. Yeah. As far as other stuff, I mentioned in passing that Roger and I also worked on Sniper Elite. So that's a board game video adaptation of a video game that was on Kickstarter, and it's going to ship soon. I recently had a Kickstarter for a game called Landsworth Ridge, which I know you're familiar with some of my Solitaire War games. So that's another Solitaire War game in the same line as Pavlov's House. And then for folks who are familiar with the stuff that I've done with Trevor, primarily Undaunted, we've got Undaunted Stalingrad, which will be out later this year. So, yeah,
the Undaunted series is also really, really cool game. Oh, pretty much everything you work on, David, is really cool. So that's why I wanted to do this with you. So I want to really appreciate you thank you for the time, and hope to do this again with you in the future. And definitely wish you the greatest success in everything you're doing, and also everyone that you collaborated with on this game in particular. As you said, I definitely want to give them credit too, because I know a lot of work went behind this game, and look forward to hopefully this game having a successful campaign on GameFound. So definitely check that out. Either hopefully it's live by the time this video comes up, and you guys can look into this game more on the GameFound page. So without further ado, thanks again, David, for the time. And I'm Nick with Talking Cardboard. Hope to see you guys again soon. And of course, in the comments section of the video, please post any questions you have, either for myself or for David. I'm sure maybe he'll check the comments section now and then, or I'll ping David for an answer if needed. So hope you guys enjoyed watching this, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.